with 3 Americans detained in the regime. President Trump, while welcoming their release and thanking Kim Jong-un, emphasized the ultimate goal is denuclearization. The Moon Jae-in administration marks its first anniversary since getting to work at the top office. Among many accomplishments, the Liberal government is praised for efforts in rooting out corruption and seeking reconciliation to achieve sustainable peace. Dozens of wire, steel beams, and a massive floating crane are used to finally pull the tilting Sewol-ho up to a 90-degree angle. Hopes are high this process could help uncover new evidence as to what caused the tragic sinking. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. 3 Americans released from North Korean prison returned home. This comes after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met for talks with top officials in Pyongyang. President Donald Trump was at the airport to personally greet them all. Won Jung-hwan starts us off with what could be seen as a positive development in bilateral ties as we count down to another historic summit.
The 3 Americans released from detention in North Korea are back in the U.S. They arrived at Joint Base Andrews near Washington, D.C., and President Trump was there to board the plane and greet them at around 3 a.m. local time. He and the First Lady escorted the 3 down the stairs onto American soil and announced their official welcome to the press. In his remarks, President Trump expressed his gratitude to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for releasing them.
We very much appreciate that he allowed them to go before the meeting.
They had been detained for more than a year, and among them, Kim Dong-chul, a Christian pastor, had been detained the longest, more than 900 days. The other 2, Kim Ak-song and Tony Kim, who both worked at a Pyongyang university, were detained by the North Korean regime about a year ago. Their families weren't able to meet them at the base when they arrived, but they have issued a statement thanking President Trump for engaging directly with North Korea. As the 3 men stepped onto the tarmac, there were cheers from the press when they saw they were in good condition and able to walk without assistance. But when asked about their time in North Korea, it was clear that they had been through a lot.
They treated us in many different ways. For me, I had to do a lot of labor, but when I got sick, I also got medical attention.
The Americans' return is another step towards possibly a new era of relations between Pyongyang and Washington, as the summit between Kim and Trump draws closer. Exact details about the summit have still not been released, but the result of Pompeo's visit is evidence that the 2 leaders might be able to work together for peace, despite their countries' decades of enmity. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
The delay on the release of details, including the venue for the summit, prompted some to fear the plans had stalled. Helping to alleviate that growing concern and signaling the 2 sides are back on track again is the return of detainees by the regime. Lee Ji-won help us dissect how this gesture could impact the upcoming Washington-Pyongyang meeting.
On top of having fine-tuned the details for the historic first meeting between leaders of North Korea and the United States, the release of 3 American detainees made U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang all the more satisfactory for Washington. Some experts on North Korea say this was part of Kim Jong-un's efforts to show his sincerity towards the much-anticipated summit.
With the summit ahead, this shows Kim's willingness to maintain a mood of reconciliation and show that he's determined to hold the meeting. And we can say that could translate into his sincerity in denuclearizing.
Though the experts said the release of the detainees would not have been used as a card to negotiate the lifting of economic sanctions or levels of denuclearization, as it is not that much of a bargaining chip, he said he does think the North could expect something in return.
There could have been some kind of exchange between the release of detainees and the possibility of the U.S. raising human rights issues in North Korea. The release could be a sign Kim is sending to Trump, asking him not to raise human rights problems too strongly during the summit.
But others have contrasting views.
But the fact itself that detainees had hardship inside North Korea, I think would make the President Trump to raise the issue of human rights to deal with all these kinds of situations. Congressmen, a lot of people are talking about this. There's still a lot of demonstrations in D.C. So I think this should be one of the important agenda in the summit.
Human rights is one of the most sensitive issues to North Korea. It has shown strong rhetoric and hostility whenever it has been rebuked on the matter. Just last week, North Korea's state newspaper Nodongshinmun published a commentary criticizing the U.S. as the greatest offender of human rights issues. This comes as the U.S. publication Country Reports on Human Rights Practices for 2017 labeled North Korea and a number of countries, including China and Russia, as morally reprehensible. But despite such reactions from the North, the U.S. has continued to press the issue, with the U.S. State Department issuing a scathing condemnation of Pyongyang's human rights violations last week. While some experts point to the human rights issue as one of the reasons for the delay in finalizing and announcing the details of the summit, they say the latest development between North Korea and the U.S. could mean the two have reached an agreement on the matter. 이지원, Arirang News.
And with the release and return of detained Americans by the reclusive regime, attention here in the South shifts to South Koreans held prisoners up north. Is there a possibility of Pyongyang building on this peaceful momentum? Oh Jung-hee sheds light on who the detainees are and what the government plans to do to ensure their freedom.
Now that the 3 U.S. citizens who had been detained in North Korea are back home, focus in Seoul is now on its own citizens who are still behind bars in the north. There are 6 South Koreans held in the north, 3 missionaries and 3 people who escaped from the regime but were taken back. Arirang News had an opportunity to meet with Kim Jong-sam, the elder brother of Kim Jong-uk, one of the 3 missionaries. Kim Jong-uk provided food and accommodation for North Korean citizens and taught Christian principles in Dandong, a city on China's border with North Korea. But he was caught by the regime in 2013 for what the North called anti-state crimes. Kim's family in South Korea found out through media reports that Kim was detained, but since then, they haven't heard anything about him.
There's been no response from North Korea, even when the South Korean government has raised the issue, or when I sent a letter to the International Committee of the Red Cross. I don't know if he's alive or dead.
He hopes that a string of inter-Korean talks following the summit last month could lead to a change in his brother's situation. The Seoul government says it's pouring efforts to bring back South Korean detainees. The presidential office of Cheongwade told reporters the government's measures or policies might not be visible all the time, but everything is being done to bring them back to Seoul. While the first round of inter-Korean high-level talks after the summit are expected to be held next week, Seoul's Unification Ministry says it'll continue to work on humanitarian issues through coming opportunities. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Today marks the 1-year anniversary of President Moon Jae-in's inauguration, but there were no fancy events to celebrate the occasion at the top office. Just another day, business as usual. The Liberal leader did post a message of gratitude via social media, vowing to stand by the people until the end of his term. Hwang Woo-jun shares with us his remarks.
1년 전 오늘 생각하니까 정말 기억도 잘 안 납니다. 그날이 있었는가 싶고요.
Well, Mr. President, it's hard to blame you. It was quite a day. A briefing from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the break of dawn, visiting the National Cemetery, the headquarters of each political party, and the National Assembly to be inaugurated, then appointing key Blue House officials and the Prime Minister, and finally taking a congratulatory phone call from the U.S. President at night. In light of the anniversary, President Moon Jae-in posted a statement on social media thanking the Korean people for their support. In his message, which he said he wrote Wednesday on his way back from Tokyo, the president said the past year was about transforming Korea into a country that people can be proud of. He said his administration has tried to eradicate deep-rooted evils like corruption and set the nation's history straight while seeking reconciliation. It also tried, he said, to eliminate the fear of war and establish a sustainable peace while showing Korea's potential to the world through the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. The South Korean president also noted that his efforts have been met with some resistance from people he said fear change. He stressed that he and his administration still have a long way to go and pledged to power through alongside the people. And in another tweet, the liberal leader thanked the people for their love and support and expressed his desire to make a positive impact on people's lives during his time in office. A lot of important things are happening in the region now diplomatically, including but not only the recent Inter-Korean summit, the trilateral talks between Seoul, Tokyo, and Beijing, and the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington summit. So there was no extravagant ceremony to celebrate the administration's first year. But as he starts his next four, President Moon is sounding as committed to change as he was last May when he came into office pledging to build, quote, a nation worthy of being called a nation. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The Moon administration's efforts to be more approachable can now be seen in the area around Cheongwade. The nation's top office is opening a mountain that was previously restricted to the public for security reasons. Cha Sang-mi went to check it out for us.
It's been a year since the Moon Jae-in administration came into office promising change. Change for the people in their daily lives for the entire nation. One of the many changes in the past year has been witnessed in and around the presidential office of Cheongwade, or the Blue House, which is now much more accessible to the public. Mount Inangsan, just behind the presidential Blue House, is one place where the average Koreans can freely take a hike, one strictly off-limits to the public.
Part of this mountain, however, has been restricted to the public since January 1968, after North Korean special forces attempted to assassinate the then South Korean President Park Chung-hee in his residence at the Blue House.
Following President Moon's visit to the mountain in March, the Blue House decided to tear down the barbed wire fences and open the mountain to public for the first time in half a century.
Some areas were restricted for military and security reasons, but recently, through long discussions, we decided to remove unnecessary military structures and return the entire part of the mountain to our citizens.
The official says instead of an excessive military presence, the mountain will now be under close watch using cutting-edge military equipment.
When I came hiking here a few years ago, these areas were restricted and under construction. But now that I hear it's open to the public, it's so meaningful.
We came here all the way from Incheon as we heard the mountain is opening to the public with the Moon Jae-in administration's anniversary. The air is great and we love it.
The road in front of the presidential office has also been completely open to the public 24/7, day and night since last year, after the restrictions put in place 50 years ago were removed. Tourists and individual demonstrators were also given the freedom to enjoy themselves and voice their opinions at the Fountain Square in front of the top office.
So this is the first time I've been back to Korea since the new administration, and I've seen such a big change in Seoul and in Korea in general. And it's a fantastic thing that the Korean Peninsula is opening up to the world.
The latest move by the Blue House aims at creating a friendly, open atmosphere around Korea's top office. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
So it's already been a year since the nation welcomed its first liberal president in nearly a decade. How is he doing so far? An approval rating of over 80% is one clear indicator of the public's positive response to Moon Jae-in and his open approach to government. Here's Choi Si-young with a recap of year one.
Moon Jae-in was sworn into office the same day as the final votes were counted, marking his first day at the Blue House on May 10th. Unlike other presidential elections, there was no transition period between election and inauguration as the election came about from former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment. And that could be why President Moon, also known as Candlelight Movement President, has sought to change the way politics is done in Korea, even looking to rewrite the constitution.
나라를 나라답게 만드는 대역사가 시작됩니다. 이 길에 함께 주십시오.
President Moon's efforts to bring about changes with the new administration can be witnessed by small things like how he takes a stroll with his Blue House staff holding a coffee in a cordial and friendly manner.
대통령 지시에 대해서 의견을 제기하는 것은 해도 되느냐가 아니라 해야 할 의무입니다.
President Moon has vowed to communicate more actively with the public, and actions such as stepping away from his guarded convoy to shake hands with the public or showing sincere condolence at the site of disasters like fires and earthquakes sets him apart from his authoritarian predecessors.
늦었지만 정부를 대표해서 머리 숙여 사과와 위로의 말씀을 드립니다.
He has also improved ties with Beijing and tried to resolve the conflict over the THAAD missile system deployment. And as for the Korean Peninsula, Moon Jae-in has played a significant role in building towards peace with Pyongyang.
평화가 시작된 동계올림픽이라고 특별하게 기록해 주길 바랍니다.
President Moon invited North Korea to the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics, and the North sent a delegation to Pyeongchang, starting the atmosphere of reconciliation between the two Koreas. The Peace Olympics restored confidence in Moon as the driver for a peaceful resolution of the Korean crisis and helped secure Kim Jong-un's first agreement to hold an inter-Korean summit and a possible meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. That historic inter-Korean summit took place last month, resulting in the Panmunjom Declaration. Right after his highly anticipated meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Moon's approval rating saw a 10 percentage point spike from the previous week. His current approval rating is at 83%, but Moon's ratings have remained in the 70% range or higher throughout his first year in office, the highest ratings of any South Korean president. Just 12 months into his tenure as president, Moon is on the verge of orchestrating an unprecedented summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And this is why his remaining 4 years are something to look forward to. 최시영, Arirang News.
4 years ago, a ferry capsized in waters off the nation's southwestern coast, taking hundreds of young lives with it. Today, the tragic Sewol-ho, which has been lying on its side, was set upright after a successful operation to lift and turn the vessel. Kim Mo-kyun updates us on the development that could help the ongoing investigation into the disaster.
On Thursday, the Sewol-ho ferry was finally lifted upright, revealing the full shape of the ferry for the first time since it capsized in 2014.
After going through a practice lift on Wednesday, today we were able to safely turn the ferry to its upright position 100 days after we were first given the task.
Leading the operation, local shipbuilder Hyundai Samho Heavy Industries started the lifting process at 9 a.m. on Thursday, pulling 64 wires through a 10,000-ton floating crane that's connected to a total of 66 steel beams installed on both sides of the ferry. The vessel had been gradually pulled upright in 6 stages by tilting the body of the ferry by 35 degrees from the ground to 50 degrees and finally to 90 degrees. Hundreds of people flocked to the southern port, including bereaved families, members of the press, and ordinary citizens.
This kind of thing should never happen again. I hope that through today's achievement we can finally uncover the truth behind what exactly caused the ferry to sink and mend the hearts of the victims' families.
Now that the Sewol-ho has been lifted to an upright position, the Sewol-ho Investigation Committee says it will install a pathway that can allow access to the ship's interior so that they can start removing hazardous elements. After that, investigators will officially begin to search for any remains of 5 victims that are still unaccounted for, while recovering personal items they find in order to have them returned to their respective families.
Today is a historic day for many of us, including myself. I hope that with the latest development, the remains of the 5 victims who are still missing are found soon. I also hope that nobody ever goes through a tragedy like this. I also hope that nobody in this country would suffer the same pain we went through.
However, investigators say official search operations are unlikely to start for the next few weeks, as the process of safely securing the ferry, including removing the support beams, won't be finished until June 10th. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News, Mokpo.
The Korean government and the General Motors reached an agreement on how to rescue GM Korea. The American auto giant will provide about $6 billion of extra investment to GM Korea, and the Korea Development Bank will provide $750 million to the firm. The deal was struck between the nation's finance chief Kim Dong-yeon and the president of GM International, Barry Eagle. According to the government, such a decision could be made as they found ways to improve GM Korea's profitability. Until the 1980s, South Korea was a recipient of humanitarian food aid. It is now a donor to developing nations after joining the Food Assistance Convention earlier this year. Seoul's first shipment of rice departed from Gunsan port today. Our Park Hyo-jun was there to witness the historic moment.
South Korea has sent its first donation of rice overseas since joining the Food Assistance Convention this January. Following a ceremony led by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, a ship carrying thousands of tons of locally grown rice left Gunsan port in Jeollabuk-do province on Thursday to deliver 12,000 tons of rice to Yemen and 10,000 tons to Ethiopia through the World Food Program. Decades ago, South Korea used to receive humanitarian food aid from the international community. But now with the first delivery of rice under the FAC, South Korea becomes the first country that has gone from a taker of food aid to a giver.
Today is a historical moment because it is the first time that Korea is sending food aid to Africa. This is a milestone in the relations between Korea and African countries.
The FAC has 16 members, including the United States, the European Union, and Japan. And in total, they promised to donate $3.2 billion of food within the year. And South Korea has promised the sixth highest amount, with food aid worth at least $42 million.
Joining the FAC will be a stepping stone for local rice exports. It will not only raise the global status of our country, but also help control the excess supply of rice in the country.
The government will send the rest of the promised 50,000 tons of rice to countries in the Middle East and Africa by the year's end. And depending on the recipient country's needs and domestic finances, it may increase the amount of aid in the coming years. Park Hyo-jun, Arirang News, Gunsan.
Elsewhere around the world, Israel and Iran exchanged fire for hours during a volatile night in the Golan Heights on Thursday local time. This marks the first time Tehran's forces fired rockets directly at Israeli troops. The move follows a series of military strikes by Israel in Syria that targeted Iranian positions since the civil war broke out in 2011. Syria and Iran blamed the previous strikes on Israel. Iranian leaders vowed revenge, bringing two of the region's major powers to the brink of a full-scale armed conflict. The most recent strike comes as the two rivals continue battling for regional influence, and only less than 2 days after Washington withdrew from the 2015 deal to curb Iran's nuclear program. Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, the weather has been great this week, and everyone is hoping, keeping their fingers crossed, that it will remain this way.
Daniel, the trees are getting greener with all the sun we've been getting lately. And tomorrow the country will have another sunny day and sunny skies, although it'll get cloudier into the afternoon. The UV levels are expected to get quite high again tomorrow, though. And in fact, almost all regions will see very high levels, so protect your skin with sunblock, hats, and also sunglasses. It's very warm during the day, but the air gets chilly as the heat quickly escapes as the sun goes down. For some regions, there's about 15 degrees Celsius difference during the day from the morning, so dress in layers to stay warm. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off the day with 11 degrees Celsius. Daegu begins at 11 degrees, Gyeongju at 10 degrees. The daily highs over in Seoul will rise up to 21 degrees, while Gwangju and Busan tops out to 25 and 20 degrees. Now make sure to get rain check this weekend because on Saturday, rain will drench the nation through Sunday morning. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.